Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. This morning I'm looking at a book which has come to us from 11 International Publishing. We've reviewed a number of their books. They're very interesting books. Obviously translations come into this with the works concerned, but I think they're a great contribution to the international discussion of legal issues. This one has got the interesting title, Sustainability Clauses in International Business Contracts, being written by, I hope I pronounced her name correctly, please apologise if I've got it wrong, Katerina Peterkova Mitkidis. So it's Katerina Peterkova Mitkidis. Anyway, thank you. I'm going to call you Katerina if that's all right, and make life a lot easier. The book, obviously, as I've said, comes from 11 International Publishing and is part of the Dovenschmidt Monographs. Now, my wife Elizabeth and I had a good look at this book. It was very interesting, sustainability being one of those words in the English language that some of us haven't really got that much of an understanding what it really means. We think we know what it means, but it's become an international word to a certain extent, so we have to be a little bit careful about what we think the implications of the meaning of the word sustainability really is. But I think we know things that will be of a continuing nature, but of a, I think what I would say is a positive continuing nature, if I can put it that way. The title we've given our review is Sustainability Clauses in Contracts, the Implications and Issues Analysed and Discussed. And that's exactly what you've got with this book. Let's have a look at it first of all. Not a big book. It's Katerina's name at the bottom there. And there's the front with the side and then the back. You can see the back there. It's a hardback. And the size of the type is a bit small for people with my eyesight. You've got a slightly different structure as you do with 11 publications. You've got lists of graphs and figures at the end. And then you've got things like references right at the end. That's the bibliography. There's a lot of information there. And then going back from that, you can see how much the references, how long the references go. Then you get into after that, you get to the annexes themselves. That's with references, it's bibliography starting it off, but it's got quite a lot more to go with it because it's got things like some case law, articles and so forth. So it's done in a slightly different way from what we would be used to in England or Britain. But that doesn't mean to say it's wrong, it's just the way they do it. And in fact, as long as you know where you're looking, you'll find the stuff quite quickly anyway. You've then got appendices or annexes at the back there. Then if we get into the body copy, there are some final conclusions there. You see the structure. You've got a number, chapter heading number. You've got the basic structure there. You've got paragraph numbering. The typeface is slightly different, obviously, but you've got the fonts used are slightly different. You do have footnoting, which is useful to have as well. But you don't really, and then you've got the annexes there. You don't really have, it's not structured in quite the same way as others, but if you get to the main bulk, again, you've got as I say, you've got the paragraph numbering and footnoting, so you should quite quickly be able to find what you want. And it is, I think, pretty well laid out. There's the front of it there, and then you've got the actual table of contents. You can see they're running through. This is which is what we would call the detailed table of contents, so you can find things quite quickly. There we are. And then you've got acknowledgements, all the people to thank who've been involved in it, and then you go straight into part one, research, topic and design. Then a nice little quote, and so forth. Now, I'm not quite sure, but I'm taking it this has been translated from other languages. You do have some very figure work as well with various diagrams and so on. I found it very interesting. It is an international book. We do have a lot of international business today within the community that we're part of the European Union, as it's now called, the old economic community. But when I talk about community, I mean the worldwide global contracting community. And so I think it will be of use, certainly in the longer term, as we look more towards the middle of this century, of the values that this book might have, because you're getting some idea, as we become a global community rather than little pockets here and there. And we have to start looking at where our resources are and where our markets are and everything else, and where our contractual agreements are actually based. And of course, many people will know that the jurisdiction in terms of law, of the common law in England and Wales, is the preferred jurisdiction actually now for many people. Therefore, it's an important area for us to think about. This is what we say about the book anyway. The concept of corporate social responsibility, that's CSR, has been around for decades. And as anybody who now and then dips into the Harvard Business Review and similar journals to it will of course immediately realise it's not something that's new, in other words. Latterly, however, it's become a business imperative, particularly in respect of concern for the environment and for sustainable development. So I said, what do we mean by sustainable? And that is really where the question is. Sustainable, to my mind, if you picture it, is something that is continuing but is positive. That's really how I'm putting it forward as a concept of sustainability. Now, that's my own personal view, having come across this word and found it rather difficult to conjure up some image as to what it actually means, but I hope that helps. In all, then, this book actually gives serious thought to legal implications of where we are today, and what the author of the book, Katerina, says and refers to as the regulatory gap is looked at, with various governments, of course, disagreeing on how the globally recognised goal of sustainable development may be achieved. Of course, that's the problem, is the getting of the agreement. Once you work out what the word means and what you're looking at, you then move forward. Corporate lawyers, then, we think, especially environment lawyers, will be interested in the examination of these and the related issues which are put forward in the book, in which the author turns the focus on CSR dilemmas in the direction of contract and contractual agreements, which I've said elsewhere and I repeat here. The very basis of everything we do is agreements, whether they're binding legal agreements, deeds in terms of form, or whatever you might have, whether written down or oral. We exist on the basis of Mr. A or Miss A agreeing with Mr. A or Miss B, and therefore it's those relationships, normally to the exclusion of others, which is the basis of our society. So you have a conversation and you agree things, whether it's binding or not, another matter. But that's the basis of our, if you like, our link between each other. Now, having said all of that, the book itself, published by 11 International Publishing, which is based in The Hague in the Netherlands, the book presents, we think, a body of research which is an excellent quality into at least one area that's not received all that much attention in the past, namely sustainability contractual clauses, or SCCs. Again, as I said, an important area of contract, if you think about it. And putting it another way, these are basically social and environmental clauses in international supply chain contracts. Now, that is the basis of a way we're going to probably be doing business, certainly for the rest of this century, the 21st century. Now, if that is the case, we've got to know how we're doing it. Excuse me. The author then, Katerina, examines the use of private contracts to pursue public policy goals relating to sustainable development. Placed under scrutiny, of course, is the legal framework and the legal effects that SCCs might have in contributing to and eventually achieving sustainable development objectives, which of course must be one of the main goals. The aim then, says the author, is to explore both the potential and the limitations of contractual governance in achieving global sustainability. And with a number of governments, especially in certain developing countries, reluctant to fulfill even their basic environmental obligations, the author maintains that international supply chain contracts are indeed potentially suitable regulatory tools for global sustainability. And to this end, she reviews such areas as the contract paradigm and the anatomy of the sustainability clause itself. Now, these and other related areas of inquiry are subjected to rigorous and detailed analysis based on a monumental amount of research. And I think it's important to note here the extensive and detailed footnoting you've got in the book and the list of the references, which run to almost 30 pages. And there are practical suggestions too for methods and procedures by which the concept of and the implementation of sustainability may be undertaken by individual companies. This book, of course, makes a valuable contribution to the current and often urgent discussion generally on the responsibility of global business community matters towards the environment and the legal tools which can ultimately bring environmental goals a lot further forward. And that's what we will be looking at very much, I think, in the next, certainly the next decade, as we move forward. Let me conclude by saying that regulators, legislators and environmental policymakers, as well as, of course, researchers and anyone involved in legal contractual issues, will welcome the insights that Katerina has produced here with her careful analysis and the arguments which are presented, I think, in a very nice fashion in the book. The publication stated at 2015. Let's have a quick look at it. Hardback, as you can see there, front, spine and back. You can see, I'm going to bring it up close, you can see this very small type, but you can see what actually the content of the book has. Then we look at the main book itself, and you've got right in the middle, you've got the detailed footnotes, and you've got a lot of paragraph numbering. They don't use too much. They don't use that much by way of paragraph numbering. You can see the way it's done. Some books tend to have an awful lot. This one doesn't. But again, right at the back, you've got the huge amount of bibliographical material, the references there. It's been very well put together, this book, no question about it. Legal framework, right in the middle again, chapter 6. Again, extremely interesting, I think, from the point of view of any lawyer's perceptions of international, the concepts of sustainability internationally in the next few decades. Then just the table of contents, which you can see at the front. Well, thank you very much to the author. Thank you to 11 International Publishing, very much indeed. It's an excellent book, and I'm sure it's one that we will be hearing a lot more about in the future. So thank you to all concerned. Bye-bye.